Marilyn Monroe was 36 years old when she bought her first house. 36. After a lifetime of foster homes and orphanages, and rented apartments and hotel rooms, and living in houses that belonged to husbands, after decades of being the most famous woman in the world, after making millions of dollars for movie studios, after being on magazine covers and movie posters everywhere, at 36 years old, Marilyn Monroe finally had a home that was hers. Not rented, not borrowed, not her husband's, hers. The address was 12305 5th Helena Drive in Brentwood, Los Angeles, a small Spanish-style bungalow, modest by Hollywood standards, just 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, about 2,500 square feet. It cost $77,500, which was a lot of money in 1962, but Marilyn could afford it. She closed on the house in February 1962, moved in immediately, and for the first time in her entire life, Marilyn Monroe owned a home. She was so happy, so excited. She told everyone, called her friends, told them to come see her house. The first place that was really hers. She picked out Mexican tiles for the bathroom herself, bright blue and yellow, because she loved Mexican culture, loved the colors, loved the warmth. She planned a garden, ordered plants, designated one bedroom as a potential nursery, because she still hoped, still thought maybe adoption would work out, still believed she might become a mother. This house would be where that happened, where she would bring a child home, where she would finally have a family. This was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter, a home, stability, a future. But 6 months later, Marilyn was dead. In her bedroom, in the house she'd lived in for only half a year, the house where she'd placed Mexican tiles and planned gardens and hoped for children. The first home she ever owned became the place where her life ended. This is the story of the house Marilyn finally called home, and how it became her tomb. To understand what that house meant to Marilyn, you have to understand her childhood. Norma Jane Mortensen was born in 1926. Her mother Gladys was mentally ill, couldn't take care of her, so Norma Jane went into foster care, then an orphanage, then more foster homes, back and forth, never staying anywhere long, never having a place that was hers, never having a room she could decorate, never having a home. She lived in 11 different homes before she was 16 years old. 11. Each time she'd start to feel settled, she'd have to leave, pack up her few belongings, move somewhere else, start over. She later said the worst part wasn't the moving, it was the hoping. Every new place, she'd hope. Maybe this one would be different. Maybe this family would keep her. Maybe this would be home. And every time that hope would be broken, she'd have to leave, and hope a little less the next time. When Norma Jane was 16, she married Jim Dougherty, partly to escape foster care. If she married, she wouldn't have to go back to an orphanage. So she married, moved into Jim's family's house, then into military housing when Jim joined the Merchant Marines. But that wasn't her home. That was Jim's home. She was just living there. When they divorced in 1946, she was 20 years old, back to having no home. She moved into a hotel, then rented rooms, then small apartments, always temporary, always borrowed, never hers. As Norma Jane became Marilyn Monroe, as she got famous, she made enough money to rent nicer places, nicer apartments, nicer hotels, but they were still rented, still temporary. When she married Joe DiMaggio in 1954, she moved into his house in San Francisco. Joe's house, not hers. When they divorced 9 months later, she was out again, homeless again, rented another apartment. When she married Arthur Miller in 1956, she moved into his place in Connecticut. Arthur's place, his farm, his house. She lived there for 5 years. but it was never hers. She was Arthur's wife, living in Arthur's house. When they divorced in 1961, she moved out, back to hotels, back to rented apartments, back to having no home. By early 1962, Marilyn was 36 years old. She'd been famous for over a decade, had millions of dollars, could have bought a house any time. But she hadn't. Maybe because she didn't believe she deserved one. Maybe because she was always married or about to be married, and assumed she'd live in her husband's house. Maybe because buying a house meant admitting she might be alone. And Marilyn didn't want to be alone. But in February 1962, after 3 failed marriages, after years of rented rooms and borrowed spaces, Marilyn decided she was tired of not having a home. She was going to buy one, her own, where she made the rules, where she chose the paint colors and the furniture and the flowers in the garden, where she belonged. Finally, she found the house through a real estate agent. 12305, 5th Helena Drive, end of a quiet cul-de-sac, in Brentwood. Small, private, surrounded by trees, Spanish style with white stucco walls, and a red tile roof. It had been built in the 1920s. Nothing fancy, not a mansion, not what people would expect for a Hollywood star. But Marilyn loved it. Loved that it was small, cozy, felt like a real home, not a showplace. The asking price was $77,500. Marilyn's business manager thought she should negotiate. She wanted this house. She'd pay what they were asking. She didn't want to risk losing it over money, so she paid full price. Closed in February 1962, and got the keys to her first home. Marilyn was like a child with a new toy. She called everyone she knew. Come see my house. My house. I have a house. Her friend Pat Newcomb came over. Marilyn gave her a tour, showed her every room, pointed out where she was going to put furniture, where she was going to plant roses, which room would be the nursery, if she ever got to adopt a child. Pat said Marilyn was happier than she'd been in months. Finally had something that was hers, something stable, something permanent. The first thing Marilyn did was redesign the bathroom. She wanted Mexican tiles. She'd always loved Mexico, had visited several times, loved the culture, the warmth, the colors, so she had the bathroom redone with bright blue and yellow Mexican tiles, hand-painted, imported, beautiful. The tiles covered the walls around the bathtub, covered the counters around the sink, bright, cheerful. Every time Marilyn used that bathroom, she was reminded of Mexico, of color and warmth, and life. Those tiles were her choice, her style, her home. She ordered plants for the garden, wanted roses, lots of roses, wanted fruit trees, lemon and orange, wanted it to feel alive, growing. She hired a gardener to help her plan it out, told him exactly what she wanted, where each plant should go, what colors, what scents. The garden was going to take time, months to fully establish, but Marilyn was patient. She was planning for the future. This was her home. She'd be here for years, decades maybe. She had time. One of the 4 bedrooms she designated as a potential nursery. It was small, sunny, perfect for a child. Marilyn didn't buy furniture for it yet, didn't want to jinx it, but she knew that room was for the baby she still hoped to have. Through adoption, she'd been rejected by American adoption agencies. Too unstable, they said. Too many divorces, too many mental health issues. But maybe a foreign adoption, maybe Mexico, maybe somewhere else. Maybe it would still happen. And when it did, that room would be ready. That sunny little room with windows, overlooking the garden. Her child would grow up there, in that room, in that house, in the home Marilyn finally owned. But even as Marilyn was setting up her house, planning her garden, hoping for a child, Things were falling apart. Her career was struggling. She'd been fired from Something's Got to Give in June. The studio said she was unreliable, too many absences, too difficult to work with. Marilyn was devastated, felt like Hollywood was done with her. She was 36, old by Hollywood standards. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was washed up. Her mental health was deteriorating. The depression that had haunted her for years was getting worse. The pills weren't helping anymore. Or maybe they were helping too much. She was taking too many. Nembutal for sleep, chloral hydrate for anxiety, mixing them, taking more than prescribed. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, was worried. Visited her at the house almost daily. Tried to help, but Marilyn was sinking. The house that was supposed to be a new beginning was becoming a prison. Marilyn would stay in her bedroom for days. Wouldn't come out. Wouldn't answer calls. The Mexican tiles she'd loved seemed to mock her now. All that brightness, all that color, in a house where she felt so dark, so empty. The nursery she'd hoped to fill remained empty. The adoption applications had been rejected. No agency would approve her. The garden she'd planned wasn't finished. The roses hadn't bloomed yet. Everything felt incomplete, unfinished, like her life. In the weeks before her death, Marilyn's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was living at the house, staying there full-time, ostensibly to help Marilyn, to keep her company, but really to watch her, to make sure she didn't hurt herself. Dr. Greenson had arranged it, thought Marilyn needed someone there. Eunice slept in one of the guest rooms, the room that would have been for a child, the nursery, but instead of a crib and toys, it had Eunice's bed, Eunice's things. Another reminder of what Marilyn didn't have, couldn't have. On August 4th, 1962, Marilyn spent most of the day in her bedroom, in the house she'd owned for 6 months, the house that was supposed to represent a new start, a better life. She made phone calls, talked to friends, talked to her psychiatrist, seemed anxious, scared, but not more than usual. Eunice checked on her several times, made sure she was okay. Around 8 p.m., Marilyn said she was going to bed, took her pills, closed her bedroom door. Eunice went to her own room. The house was quiet, just the two of them, in the small house at the end of the cul-de-sac. Marilyn in her bedroom with the door locked. Eunice in the room that was supposed to be a nursery. Around midnight, Eunice woke up, felt something was wrong, went to Marilyn's door, knocked, no answer, tried the door, locked. Eunice went outside, looked through Marilyn's bedroom window, saw Marilyn on the bed, not moving, phone in her hand. Eunice panicked, called Dr. Greenson. He came immediately, broke the window, climbed in, found Marilyn dead, on her bed, in her bedroom, in the house she'd lived in for 6 months, the first house she'd ever owned. The official cause of death was ruled acute barbiturate poisoning, probable suicide. The pills she'd been taking, too many. Whether on purpose or by accident, no one could say for sure, but the result was the same. Marilyn Monroe was dead at 36, in the house she'd bought to represent a new beginning, the house where she'd placed bright Mexican tiles and planned gardens and hoped for children. She'd lived there for 6 months, February to August, half a year, in the first home she'd ever owned, and now it was the place where she'd died. The house was part of Marilyn's estate, sold eventually, passed through several owners over the years, each one aware of its history, aware that Marilyn Monroe had died there. Some owners tried to renovate, to change it, to erase the past, but others wanted to preserve it, wanted to keep Marilyn's memory alive. The Mexican tiles she'd chosen stayed, through all the ownership changes, through all the years. Those bright blue and yellow tiles remained. Marilyn's choice, Marilyn's style, still there in the bathroom, a small reminder of the woman who'd lived there so briefly. By the 2000s, the house had appreciated enormously in value, not just because of its location in Brentwood, but because of its history. Because Marilyn Monroe had lived there, had died there, it became a landmark of sorts. People would drive by, take pictures, stand outside the gate, try to glimpse the house where Marilyn had spent her final months, the house that she'd bought with such hope, such excitement, the house that became her tomb. In 2017, the house was sold for $7.25 million, nearly 100 times what Marilyn had paid for it 55 years earlier. The new owners were a private couple, didn't want publicity, didn't want to be known as the people who owned Marilyn's house. They just wanted to live there. But they were aware of the history, aware of what the house meant, and in a 2019 interview, they talked about living in Marilyn's home. "We didn't want to change the tiles," the owner said. "Marilyn chose those Mexican tiles in the bathroom. They're beautiful, bright, happy. We thought about renovating, making the bathroom more modern, but we couldn't. Those tiles are Marilyn's. She picked them out. She loved them. They're part of the house's history. So we left them. And honestly, every time we use that bathroom, we think about her, about how excited she must have been choosing those tiles. Designing her first home. It's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time." The owner also talked about the feeling of the house. "There's something unfinished about it," she said. "Like Marilyn never got to complete what she started. She had plans for the garden, plans for decorating, plans for her life here, and then she died, so the house feels incomplete. Like there's still work to be done that will never be done. It's a beautiful house. We love living here, but sometimes it feels sad, like the walls remember, like they know Marilyn didn't get to stay, didn't get to finish her dream." The nursery room, the room Marilyn had designated for the child she hoped to adopt. That room has been many things since Marilyn's death. A guest room, an office, storage. The current owners use it as a home gym, but they know what Marilyn intended it to be. And sometimes, the owner said she'll be in that room and think about it, about Marilyn standing there, looking at the sunlight coming through the windows, imagining a crib, imagining a child, imagining a future that never happened. "It's the saddest room in the house," the owner said, "because you can feel what she wanted, what she hoped for, and knowing it never happened, that she died before she could become a mother, before she could fill that room with love and life. It breaks your heart." The garden that Marilyn planned but never finished was eventually completed by later owners. Roses grow there now. Fruit trees, exactly what Marilyn wanted, but she never got to see them bloom, never got to pick an orange from her own tree, never got to cut roses from her own garden. She bought the plants, made the plans, but died before the garden grew. "Sometimes I'll be out there," the owner said, "and I'll think about how Marilyn would have loved this, how she would have sat right here, looked at these roses, felt proud that this was hers, that she'd made something beautiful, but she never got that. And that seems so unfair." The bedroom where Marilyn died has been changed. Different furniture, different paint, different everything. The current owners didn't want to keep it the way it was, didn't want to feel like they were sleeping in a room where someone had died. So they changed it, made it their own. But they still know, still feel it. "You can change the furniture," the owner said, "but you can't change the history. We know what happened in that room, and sometimes late at night, I'll think about it, about Marilyn lying there, dying there, in the house she'd been so excited to own. It's tragic. She waited her whole life to have a home, and when she finally got one, she only had 6 months. And then it became the place where her life ended. I don't believe in ghosts. But if I did, I'd say Marilyn's still here, still trying to finish what she started, still trying to make this the home she dreamed it would be. The house at 12305 5th Helena Drive remains a private residence. The owners don't give tours, don't allow visitors. The address is widely known, but the house itself is behind gates and hedges, private, protected, as Marilyn would have wanted it. This was her sanctuary, her escape from Hollywood and fame and pressure. This was supposed to be where she could be Norma Jane, where she could just be herself. Not a movie star, not a sex symbol, just a woman, in her own home, living her own life. In 2024, the house is estimated to be worth over $8 million. The neighborhood has changed, more expensive, more exclusive, but the house remains small, modest, still just 2,500 square feet, still just 4 bedrooms, still the same Spanish-style bungalow that Marilyn fell in love with in 1962. The Mexican tiles she chose are still there. The garden she planned is thriving. The nursery she hoped to fill is still there, though used for other purposes, and the bedroom where she died remains, though transformed. The house stands as a monument, not to her death, but to her hope, to the dream she had of finally having a home, a place that was hers, a future. There's something profoundly sad about the fact that Marilyn Monroe, one of the most famous people in the world, didn't own a home until she was 36 years old, didn't have a place that was truly hers until 6 months before she died. She'd lived in so many places, slept in so many beds, but none of them were hers. They were borrowed, temporary, always with the understanding that she'd have to leave eventually. And when she finally got a home, when she finally had a place that was permanent, that was hers, she only got 6 months. 6 months to enjoy it, 6 months to plan her garden and pick her tiles and hope for a child. 6 months before it became the place where she died. If Marilyn had lived, what would that house have become? Would she have raised a child there? Would she have spent decades there? Would she have grown old in that house, sat in that garden as an elderly woman, looked at those Mexican tiles and remembered being young and excited? We'll never know, because 6 months after she bought her first home, Marilyn Monroe was dead, and the house that was supposed to be a beginning became an ending. But in another way, the house is eternal. It still stands. The tiles are still there. The garden still grows. And as long as the house exists, as long as those tiles remain, there's a piece of Marilyn Monroe still living, still hoping, still dreaming of the home she finally owned, the life she finally started to build, the future she never got to have. The house at 12305 5th Helena Drive is more than just a house. It's a monument to unfulfilled dreams, to hopes that died too soon, to a woman who spent her whole life looking for home, and when she finally found it, only got to stay for 6 months. If this story makes you think differently about home, about belonging, about the things we wait our whole lives to have, and sometimes get too late, then subscribe for more untold stories about Marilyn Monroe. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves a place to call home. And tell us in the comments, did you know Marilyn didn't own a home until 6 months before she died? What does that tell us about her life? Sometimes the saddest stories are about the things we wait for, the things we dream about, the things we finally get, just before we lose everything. Marilyn Monroe waited 36 years to own a home, waited through foster care and orphanages, and failed marriages, and rented rooms, waited through fame and fortune, and success, waited until she was ready, until she believed she deserved it. And when she finally bought her house, when she finally had a home that was hers, she got 6 months. 6 months to love it. 6 months to plan for a future. 6 months before it became the place where her life ended. The Mexican tiles are still there, bright and cheerful. The garden she planned is blooming. The nursery she hoped to fill is still empty. And the house that was supposed to be a beginning will always be remembered as an ending. The first home Marilyn Monroe ever owned, and the last place she ever lived.